Please join me in prayer. Holy Spirit, guide us in our path as we consider the words of Scripture and the words of our tradition in this service. Please help us to always watch and listen for the words that are being spoken to us today. Amen. So looking at the two readings this morning, they both seem to have to do with, among other things, authority. And the question of authority itself. It's the question that the Pharisees put to Jesus in our reading from Matthew. Chief priests and elders of the people. Although the Pharisees asked similar questions. But these are figures of authority who are challenging Jesus' authority to do what he is doing. And in our reading from Exodus, it is again about Moses' authority as leader of the people. Is he trustworthy? Should they be listening to this guy who brought them out in the wilderness, or has he just led them out to die? And so I thought I would reflect on authority for the sermon and see where it takes me. As I read, especially the reading from Matthew, it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is him talking about authority. The most improper job of anyone, even saints, who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other people. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all those who seek the opportunity. Have any of you ever had a bad boss? And then there's Diane like, yes. It's like eye contact. Sure, yeah. Backpedal. So those are enthusiastic yeses. Or have you ever had a frustrating experience with a bureaucrat? Ever been kind of fed up with somebody in a position? Somebody behind a desk maybe who doesn't want to help you? What's that? Currently, yes. And I would say probably historically as well. Do you find thinking about politicians and their behavior soothing and reassuring? No, right? So we have a sense of authority. We certainly have experiences of authority that are positive and negative. We've probably had good bosses. We've probably had good experiences with people behind desks. We might even be able to think of a politician we could tolerate at least, right? The more local you get, the more tolerable they get sometimes, I think. Now, last Sunday, I talked a bit about hierarchy, which is related to authority, but not the same thing, okay? Hierarchy was like the org chart where everyone lives in a pyramid, and you're somewhere in the pyramid. You're near the top with a few people or at the bottom with a lot of people. That's hierarchy. Hierarchy assumes that some people are over other people. That's the assumption of hierarchy. And then the question isn't, should I be over anyone? Or should anyone be over me? The question is, where do I fit in the hierarchy? And usually, honestly, it's something relatively unfair. Like we have hierarchies based on race, on gender. We have hierarchies based on how much money you make. It's not always earned. I'll say that at least. Authority is kind of a different question than hierarchy. And the two don't have to coincide. You can actually have a situation where there is authority, but not hierarchy. And I want to talk about how you can have that, because I think it's important for church to really think about these things. Because the way we're supposed to be here in the kingdom of God is different from the way things are out there. And thinking more about how it's different and what can we do is something I find really worthwhile. So in brief, I would say that there is legitimate authority and there is illegitimate authority. Okay? You have authority, it's legit, or it's not. And I'll give some examples. So, why do you go to the doctor? You go to the doctor to have the doctor answer questions about your health or give you information about your health, right? And the reason you go to the doctor for that is because the doctor is an authority on health. So if your doctor says something about your health, you might want to look into it, you might want to learn more, but you're basically hopefully going to trust that more than you would trust something from someone randomly on the street or someone untrained in medicine. So we go to doctors to ask questions about our health or to get help with our health because doctors are an authority on health. Now, if your doctor tells you who to marry, that's not legitimate, right? Because the doctor's not an authority on that. So one of the things about legitimate authority is that it's limited. Legitimate authority is limited. It's only in this situation, it's only in these conditions that you have authority, and there's some good reason for it. So another example of legitimate authority. Let's say you hear a fire alarm and you're in a very tall building. And say you're in an office or in the bathroom or whatever, and you come out, you hear the fire alarm, and they're evacuating the building. And in the hallway is a firefighter who's saying, everyone go to the stairs because the elevator isn't safe. Now, when you respond to that, you're probably hopefully not going to say, you're not the boss of me, and go marching past the firefighter and get on the elevator, right? You're going to listen to the firefighter who's helping you evacuate a building, and you're going to go to the stairs. Why? Because the firefighter in this situation is an authority. Temporarily. During this evacuation, the firefighter gets to tell you what to do. And it's unwise to ignore that firefighter. If you try to go for the elevator, they might actually grab you by the shoulders and push you over toward the stairs. So legitimate authority is also temporary. It's time-bound. And it's earned. So legitimate authority, in my opinion, in my observation, is limited and it's earned. There's a reason you have that authority, and there are definite barriers to it. If the firefighter tells you who to marry or gives you health advice, you're wise to ignore that. But if a firefighter says, take the stairs, not the elevator, because the building's on fire, you should listen. Illegitimate authority is unearned or unlimited. That's one of the ways you can detect illegitimate authority. So, for example, if a YouTuber or a podcaster tells you to take horse dewormer medicine to treat COVID, that's not earned. That person is not an authority. You don't need to go to them. They might be an authority on other things. They might be very knowledgeable in other things, but this is not a doctor. Or if a preacher gets in the pulpit and tells you who to vote for, gives you a sample ballot so you can fill it out at the polling place, that is beyond the limits of that preacher's authority. They're overstepping their bounds. That's not an instance of legitimate authority. So I hope this is making intuitive sense so far. Might even be helpful. It's very complex to discern these things. When is authority legitimate? When is it not legitimate? And then the question, what do you do? But just as a basic statement, authority is limited when it's legitimate. It's limited and it's earned. And you can tell it's illegitimate when it's not earned or when it goes beyond its limits. So let's look at one interesting question posed to Jesus in our readings this morning. Jesus is being asked by the authorities of his time about his authority to do what he's doing. By what authority do you do the things that you do? Essentially, who told you could do that? Who's heard that before? Who told you could do that? Right? It's a classic method that people use to get you to try to get you to stop doing something when they don't have another good reason to get you to stop. So what I'm saying is, the chief priests and the elders of the people aren't saying, stop doing that because it's dangerous. They're not saying, stop doing that because it's harmful, or stop doing that because it's wrong. They're saying, who told you could do that? Which is an appeal to authority. And so Jesus turns the question back on them. He turns the question of authority back on who's asking. Basically placing before them, do you have a right to ask me that? Do you have the right to even question what I'm doing? And he puts before them a very simple question that they are unable to answer because they're making a political calculation and they're afraid and they're ashamed. And so since they are unable to justify their own authority, Jesus feels justified ignoring it. Therefore, I won't answer your question. Now, the chief priests and the elders hadn't overstepped the limits of their authority. The chief priests and elders had specifically the authority to ask Jesus, why are you doing what you're doing? This is the kind of thing you have chief priests and elders for, right? To hold religious leaders in check. But the problem was they hadn't earned their authority. It was still limited, but it wasn't earned. And that was revealed when Jesus challenged them and they couldn't justify themselves to a crowd of regular people. And they had to slink away, embarrassed, to try to plan some other way to trap Jesus. In our reading from Exodus, we can look at this story through the lens of authority. So the Hebrews are fleeing slavery in Egypt under Pharaoh, and they are out in the wilderness, and no one here is equipped for what they're doing. Like, this is a nation of people who were enslaved to make bricks and to serve in nurseries raising children, or to serve pregnant women as midwives. No one here is like a ranger. Nobody here is a scout. They don't know how to live outside. And so all of these, menial workers and household workers are suddenly out in the desert with only what they can carry, and they're terrified. And they continually test Moses' authority and his patience. If you read the story of Exodus, Moses loses his temper multiple times. Often asks God, why did you give me this stiff-necked people? But I think Moses' authority is legitimate and is a good contextual example of what that looks like. The first reason I think that is because the people come to him. People come to him and say, Moses, you need to help us. We have a problem. So they're identifying who their leader is. A second reason I think it's legitimate is because Moses focuses on the needs of the people. He's not there for aggrandizement. He's not getting a paycheck. He's not getting a thank you even. But his focus is on what they need. A third reason is that he's actually capable of helping them. They go to Moses because he's the person who might be able to get them out of this problem and save their lives. I think he's legitimate because he then goes to God. Because Moses doesn't think he's the Savior. He doesn't think of himself as the one that's going to save these people. He knows that God is going to save these people. And a fifth reason I think his authority is legitimate is because he goes first. He goes ahead of the people to do what needs to be done, takes elders with him so everyone knows it's not in secret. But he goes first, and then he comes back and leads the way to where he's already been. And this is very rare. When you call customer service, do you get to talk to the CEO? No. CEO doesn't go first. CEO has people to do that. CEO's at the top of the pyramid. Do politicians even obey the laws that they pass? Frequently not, frankly. It's unusual for an authority to go first, but I think it's a sign of legitimacy when we see it. So on World Communion Sunday, I think that one of the things we can and probably should do is to look at Christianity in the world, both today and historically. And I think it goes without saying that when you look at Christianity in the world today and historically, there is good and there is evil that we have done and that we do. I don't think it's a fair reading of history to say that we were the good guys. I don't think we can be honest and say we were on the right side of history every time. I also don't think it's fair to look at history and say we were the bad guys and pick out the terrible things we've done as if that's all we ever did. Right? I personally know people who have been helped, who have been saved by a Christian community. And I personally know people who have been nearly destroyed by a Christian community. We have done both, and we still do both. And often I think this is because of a failure of authority. When we have had authority, we have often misused it. And people who are in authority in the church frequently act like they don't deserve it. Every World Communion Sunday, every Sunday, I think that among other things, we're asked the same question that the chief priests and the elders asked Jesus. By what authority do we do what we do? By what authority do we make the claims that we make? Like, who told us that we could tell anybody what to do with their life? Help anybody make a decision? Say anything about right and wrong? By what authority do we do that? And I spent time on the example of Moses because I think our answer to that question has to look like Moses. That he's a good example for us. That we focus on answering the needs that people express. Not the things we think they need, not the things we tell people they need, but the actual needs that they tell us. Let people say what they need and then try to answer that. I think we also need to continually remember to look to God. That we're not going to save anybody. That's not our job when we try to. But we know to whom to look, who is actually able to save. And I think it's important for us to be willing to go first. To be the first ones to take a risk we would ask of someone else. To be the first ones to live a way of life that we would say someone else should live. Like Moses, I think we should always be willing to go first. And to remember that our authority is limited in this world. And to remember that it's up to us to show that we've earned it. Amen.